Good morning, good afternoon. We're coming to you live here. My name is David. I'm going to be your host today. Welcome to the Cybersecurity and Summer Safety Camp, first installment. Uh, my name's, again, David with ManagedMethods. We're going to be hosting today's event. We're going to go ahead and let people join in. We just went live here, 11 o'clock Mountain Time. So, again, good morning. If you're in the Pacific or Mountain time zones, good afternoon. If you're in the Central or Eastern time zones, I know we got a couple time zones covered here with our panelists today, but we're going to go ahead and let folks get joined in, and we'll get started here momentarily. We had several hundred people pre-registered for today's event, which is always great right here at the either beginning of summer for some school districts or probably final week or two for some school districts. So we'll let folks get joined into today's webinar, and we'll go ahead and get started. Let me get my screens all organized in front of me, and then we'll get underway here. All right, so while we're letting folks get joined in, again, welcome. This is the first installment of the Cybersecurity and Safety Summer Camp sessions. Today, we're going to be talking about projects to focus on for cybersecurity, student safety, everything related to cybersecurity and safety here that you might be doing this summer in your district. Again, my name's David. I'm going to be your host today. I am with ManagedMethods, and we're going to be joined by a couple panelists today here. We're supposed to have three panelists. One of our panelists, though, is unable to join us today. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to check my screens here just as a quick screen check. Ross and Tim, nod ahead. You can see the screen that's up there. All right, well, we'll go ahead and jump over here. Just as a housekeeping reminder for everyone, a couple items. Yes, as always, our webinar is being recorded, as we do with all ManagedMethods webinars. And within the next 24 to 48 hours or so, depending on how long it takes Zoom to process the video, you'll receive, all participants and registered participants will receive a copy of today's webinar. And it'll also then be posted on the ManagedMethods.com website under resources and past events, recorded webinars. Any questions you have, because all audience members are muted. So audience members, if you have a question, please submit it into the Q&A panel, and we'll get to those as we go throughout today's webinar. Again, if you're just joining in, welcome. This is the Cybersecurity and Safety Summer Camp, first installment here, first week of June. And today I'm joined by two individuals who I'll introduce, Ross and Randall, and Tim Miles here shortly. We'll get into that. We're going to be talking about the projects they're going to be doing this summer to help fortify cybersecurity, and we'd love to hear from all of you as well. Again, so good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Today's agenda, we're going to be talking a little bit. I'll set the stage first about, what we mean by multi-layered cybersecurity approaches, and then our panelists, of course, will get into it as well with you. And then, of course, we welcome audience participation with Q&As. Of course, I've got two great friends here joining us. Again, we're supposed to have had a third. Unfortunately, our third individual, Mr. Matthew Fredrickson from Council Rock, is not with us today. He had something that came up that was needed attention. But we have with us as well, right here from my home state of Colorado, Mr. Tim Miles from Steamboat Springs. And Tim, I'll ask you to share a little insights once we get going. And then I also have coming down there from almost on the coast, as we were just talking about, almost on the coast, Mr. Ross Randall from Lamar County School Districts there in Mississippi. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. I'll ask you guys to share with the audience momentarily a little bit more about your roles, your districts, and as we get into some of the stuff. So let's kind of set the stage. What we had in the invite, and we talked about it, multi-layered cybersecurity strategy. Why is it important? Well, depending on what your role is as an audience member here, some of you may be tech directors, maybe you're system administrators, maybe you're brand new to the tech side, maybe you come from the instructional side. Well, why is it important? Well, I think when we talk about cybersecurity, we all have visions in our minds, but this is one of the visions that always comes to mind for me right away, as you see on the screen. These are all headlines ripped from today's media just over the past year. It's cybersecurity incidents, data breaches, attacks, etc., are happening like wildfire across the country, not just in the commercial sector, but of course in the education sector. Obviously my two panelists know this very well. And if you want to learn more about some of these headlines, another resource that I'll share with you is if you're familiar with the K-12-6 and our friends and our partners out there. Doug Levin runs this organization. It's a great resource that you can go out and not only see the map and understand what kind of cybersecurity incidents are happening out there, but also they provide great resources, some free resources and some paid resources, but something definitely to check out. But when you look at the state of cybersecurity incidents that are occurring, school districts are facing, phishing attacks coming in through email, and now there's phishing attacks coming in through file shares. There's compromised account situations. There's data leaks from the inside that might be intentional or just accidental. There's all sorts of ways things are happening. And then over the past, 6 months, we've seen all sorts of new breeds of new wave of cybersecurity attacks. For example, this past November, there was a whole new data breach type of scenario we saw that first made big headlines with Clark County School District in Las Vegas, Nevada. And that was the Singularity MD attacks, where, there was compromised student accounts and Google groups. And, Tim, you and I, of course, talked about this at length when we were at the COSIN conference. So a whole new breed of attacks that require that you look at cybersecurity in a lot of different layers. And that's looking at it from file shares to network security to access control. It impacted, right here in my home state. Not only did Singularity MD attacks impact Clark County, it impacted one of the largest schools here in Colorado with Jeffco. And then it continued on, and it happened to, Long Beach. And then there was more and more that came out of that. We saw the NAS API data breaches and some of the other types of attacks that were occurring this year. The point is that when you talk about cybersecurity and safety within your districts, and you're talking with school board officials, administrators, as my two panelists know, and hopefully everyone out there knows, it takes a village. It's not just all on IT. It's about requiring individuals in every department of your school district to be trained and aware, but it also is a multi-layered approach. Too many times when talking to districts, they might tell me like, hey, we're good to go because we have this brand of filter, or we're good to go because we just upgraded this brand of our firewall. But you need to look at all the different layers, whether it's the infrastructure layer, the fundamental base building blocks of your district, your network, your backup, your access control, patch management, you name it, to then looking at the network that runs on the infrastructure, where we're talking about firewalls, access control, secure Wi-Fi, etc. But now things have extended further out. There's more things happening not only at the endpoints, but in the cloud and with cloud applications. And of course, we here at ManagedMethods, we live at the top layer, the cloud layer, and we also live at your filtering layer with your devices and your networks environment. So we're gonna talk about many of these things today, but I wanted to kind of just first set the stage to explain what we mean by multi-layered, what we're going to kind of talk about today, and then we'll get into those individual aspects. Part of what we'll perhaps dive in a little bit today, but I want to plug a little bit on ManagedMethods where we are, is we highly encourage people to do a cloud application security audit. A lot of times folks and my panelists may share with this, a common practice is to get an audit done, every so often, of more like pen testing or phishing testing or ways people may get access or control. But it's always important as well to make sure you're looking at the content as it resides inside your cloud apps, where your data is being stored, where it's being shared. Our specialty here, of course, here in the ManagedMethods world, is helping provide you visibility and control from your browser all the way to your mailbox, to your drive files, to third-party apps, etc. So we highly encourage that you, at least once a quarter, if not once a month, or every day, if you have a system in place like ours, where you look at third-party apps, file sharing, content, how the interaction's happening. Is there things that are being shared that shouldn't be shared from your domain to the outside? Or are there things coming in from the outside that you really don't want in your environment? And that's an area that we specialize in with our customers, and we can talk a little bit more about it and why it's important and why you want to analyze and dive into those things and look into it. So with that said, I'm going to pause the screen a little bit, get into some direct conversations now here with my two panelists. First, I would ask that, why don't we do some quick introductions? So again, I'll start with you, Tim. Maybe if you want to introduce yourself and tell the folks here a little bit about your role, and then Ross, you can go, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Sure, can do. I'm Tim Miles. I'm a technology director here in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. The background is not what my area looks like. It's very mountainous and tree and snowy. Even right now, there's still a little bit of snow. I've been a long time Managed Methods customer, right from the get-go, I think. And I run a district here of 3,000 kids. And then I run another district to the south of 400 kids. And then I run a couple private schools as well. I'm the tech for them.
Ross?
Excellent. All right, Ross Randall. I'm down in South Mississippi, as you can probably tell by my accent. And yes, the beach scene is fairly close to me, which is great. We're sitting at about 90 degrees with about a 100-degree heat index with the humidity outside. So anybody that's up north, I wish you the best because I love the heat. I've been sitting in this chair at a couple of different districts for about 20 years. So I've been around the block. I remember I tell people all the time, when I first got into this business, my main concern was, hey, is the internet up? That's it. We had to keep things rolling. It has changed so much, and a lot of us that have been around for a while, we're jumping into things that we were never really trained to do, never really had the educational background to take care of. So for us, this multi-layered approach to security, it's a must-have because, and I'm sure Tim can attest to this, and anybody out there that sits in a seat like mine, school districts don't have the money to go hire a security expert. You just can't do it. I'm lucky to keep some of my good admin on staff for more than 3 to 5 years because once they get the training, they can go get a job anywhere. So keeping people is tough. So having products that help us maintain that security posture is really good for us. But anyway, it's a constant battle. Everything that you've talked about with the security, and we're getting hit in so many different directions. And we're targets now because our data is useful, it's valuable, and these bad actors want it. So making sure that we're protected is one of the key things that we do right now.
Well, you hit the nail on the head there. That happens to, I'm sure a lot of our audience is sitting there shaking their head going, yeah. When you talked about kind of the training and staff turnover and whatnot, out of curiosity, refresh me, Ross, what's your enrollment down there at your district for the audience?
We're at about 10,500.
Okay. All right. So, a little bit different perspectives, but the problems that you two are going to talk about today, I think are going to be very similar, and they just kind of
because it's just scaled. It's just, I don't care if you've got 10,000 kids or 100,000 kids.
Yep.
Problems are the same. It's just, it's just a scale thing.
It absolutely, it magnifies on itself. Well, let's kind of get into some of the, just kind of discussion back and forth. So I'll throw questions out and then I'll maybe ask one of you to start and then the other can kind of answer. But first and foremost, our theme is kind of in general talking about, of course, cybersecurity and safety, multi-layered approach, but, summer projects. This is the time of year that here in Colorado, our schools have all wrapped up and we're now into summer mode. Colorado schools, most of them for the most part got out the week before Memorial Day. Are you out already down there, Ross? Are your schools out for summer? Okay. So I know some parts of the country, they're still going on this week and next week. But usually by the time we reach the second week in June, most are wrapped up. But either way, what summer projects, and I'll start with you, Ross. What is a summer project that you have on your list this summer that maybe you're most excited about or maybe you're most dreading? But what do you think the impact of that project is going to be on this upcoming year? So maybe start with
we've got a lot of things happening both under the umbrella of security and in general, operational type stuff. For us, we kind of backtrack a little bit. For the past 2 years, we've been really heavy on putting systems in place. I've been a customer of you guys for several years now, in which is one of the best tools in my belt that I've got for our cloud environment. But you spoke to it earlier. We've got to look at both what's hitting us here and then what's happening to our data that's not here, which would include all of our cloud applications, all of our data that sits out there. And those are two different areas that we really have to focus on. So for the past couple of years, we've been really focused on getting our environment here secure, MDR, SOC SIEM solutions, putting things like those in place. So at this point, in this summer, one of the things we're doing is trying to get a better handle on inventory. What's in our network? Well, you know, it's insane to look to see how many devices are actually connected. I've got about 23 sites, 17 campuses, a lot of auxiliary buildings. Got 10,500 kids. I've got about 1,900 employees. At any time during the day, all of those people are utilizing our network services. And so to have an understanding of what is actually on your network. If you ever do an evaluation on your network, there's two categories of devices. You've got your IT devices and you have your OT devices. Your operational technology devices are the ones that most of us don't even think about. HVAC systems that are online. Found out the other day that we've got a device that the basketball coaches are using to track the something to do with how the kids are practicing. That thing's online. There's so many devices now that are online on the network and traversing across your WAN, and they all have vulnerabilities. So everything, if it's got a chip in it, it has a vulnerability. So understanding so that's one of our biggest things this summer is we're looking at some different products and some different ways to collect that inventory of what is on the network. So that's a big one for us that I'm excited about, because I feel like that's a piece that's missing for us. If I don't know it's there, I can't control it. I can't block it. I can't patch it. Other thing is trying to reduce the footprint that attackers could use to get into something. 90% of the time, your problem is going to be people, not somebody actually hacking your firewall. So phishing training, all the training and stuff, I'm reevaluating all of those trainings this summer, and so that we can start out fresh with all the employees as soon as we get back. So that's a really big one. Also, we're in the process of converting all of the teaching staff to Chrome OS devices, which drastically will decrease that availability of footprint for for people. So those are some of the bigger projects that I'm excited about that will probably, our summers are so short now. I don't know this, we've got several states and everything. In Mississippi, one of the big pushes is we're going to a modified schedule. So our summer break starts about right now and ends about July 20th. So that's my summer to get things done. So I'm really packing a lot in during a short amount of time now.
A short window for sure, definitely. Tim, what? Yeah, again, I'll preface it. What projects do you have on your plate that either you're really excited about or pretend you're excited but you're really dreading? But either way, what are some of the big projects that you might have on your plate from a security, safety, etc. perspective?
Well, we're reviewing all our VLANs, and so we're going to segment the heck out of our network.
Mm-hmm.
And so we, like, for example, the cameras are, depending on what building, it might be 10, 11, 11, 10 something, or 12, 10 something, or 13, 10 something, depending on what building you're in. Well, now we can't have that anymore. It's going to be 10 in one building and 14 in another, and 12, because we're introducing east-west traffic firewall. So we are probably going to turn on the dreaded Windows firewall again on the local clients, because that's the first thing as someone who's my age, that's the first thing you did was make a group policy to turn all that stuff off way back when. And now we have to bring it back. So we're introducing a head-end firewall, which all VLANs will terminate on. And so computer A may not get to talk to computer B. If it doesn't need to, simply the firewall just drop packets. We're also introducing access control. You can't get on the network unless we know who you are and why you are, and if you have special circumstances. We're just visibility, what's on our network and how do you get on it, and user-based controls versus more VLAN controls. So just because I'm on this model of computer in this location, it can talk to these things. It also has to have, is it the right user on that computer? Therefore, if it's not the right user and the bad guy's on it, he's not me. Therefore, he can't get across the network, hopefully. So just that kind of stuff. it's exciting, but also at the time it's scary as heck because it's not normal to do this east-west firewalling. So I told all my staff this year is that you may come back in August and there will be a lot of things that just simply don't work because I don't know about
Changes.
them. I don't know
Oh,
about them. And until I know
well,
about them, then I can make the proper rules.
so
Yeah.
kind of in a high level summary, you're going definitely more towards a zero trust model of,
Yes.
hey, we, I don't care who you are, what device, what user, until we can trust and verify kind of, and that change is hard. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any change is hard, but especially when you as an IT department, you're planning it out, thinking it out, you make the changes, and then you got to embrace the new school year to get ready. I had a school district I was talking to just shortly after Memorial Day, and they were laughing because they're like, gosh, it was only a 3-day weekend, and here it is Tuesday morning, and I got people blowing up the inbox like, wait, how do I log into this? How do I log into this? It was just a 3-day weekend. So well, so you both talked about two different, a lot of different types of projects, but all, of course, extremely important. And I'm sure some of the, people in our audience are shaking their head going, oh yeah, we're going to be doing that. Or they might be jotting down notes and be like, okay, what is this about you're working on? Back to the word multi-layer, let's continue on here. So describe, and I'll stay with you, Tim, and we'll come back to you, Ross. Describe your multi-layered cybersecurity strategy. So, what are some of the different layers you have in place? You mentioned VLANs, firewall, east-west. And then do you have any stories about incidents that you could elaborate on where the multi-layered capabilities benefited and came into play?
Well, as you know, we picked ManagedMethods because I don't know what I don't know, right? And the Google world's very complicated. It's no different than Office 365 world. And you don't know what documents people are creating, what things they're sharing. So on that level, that's where you guys come in, and you've been a huge asset to us. So I was ransomware twice in the old school days, where we used to have file servers on site. And luckily I had good backups, and I just went back to the day before and we lost a few files. No harm, no foul, and away we went. I do not think I'd be that successful today, right? Because the bad guys don't push the button as quick and take over the one file server. They wait and learn and take over everything. So that is why I'm doing some of this on the physical layer, trying to understand my VLANs and whatnot. As you know, I have I'm the first school district in the country to go with PoE lights. So I have an entire school and a district office that has 100% every light is powered by my network switches, not from the street power. So every one of those is basically a Internet of Things operational device out there. So really understanding kind of what Ross had said of what needs to go where on the network. And so really understanding things that only need to go north-south, and putting those things in there. And I don't care who you are, you can hack the internet, but you cannot hack me. You can't get to the printers, you can't get to all that kind of stuff. MFA, we're adding MFA to Windows this year. So currently I was all in-house, and I didn't do it soon enough, so I wasn't grandfathered in. Microsoft no longer has their MFA server that you can install. You can only do it in the cloud, so I'm being forced to go to Active Directory in the cloud and Terra, so we're doing that as well. And then like I said, the dreaded firewall on the Windows devices themselves. We're going to start looking at that. So computer A cannot talk to computer B unless it has to. And then it has to have real reasons to do so. And I get to make those reasons, not the bad guy that's sitting on it.
So clearly, like a lot of different layers. Obviously, you mentioned us with your Google security layer, and then you're talking about a lot of these new things that you already have in place, plus you're beginning to implement. So, yeah, a lot of lots of layers.
and one more thing too is that in with our web filter and you as ManagedMethods, they look at similar things and they overlap a bit, but you guys look at different things. What's been really beneficial for us is the toxicity
Easy for
reports
you to say, right?
that you guys do, because that really alerts us to the mental and physical problems that a student and or a staff member may having, and they type that stuff. It's not actually in a search; it could be in a document. But then there's you guys measure the toxicity and says, oh, there's a person means harm without actually using harmful words, right? And those things are very important. They've helped a lot of our students this year.
And just as a plug for the audience that may not be familiar with the managed methods. What he's talking about is, we have cyber safety and student safety components built into our cloud monitor product, which is inside of the box of Google Workspace or inside of the box of Microsoft 365. And Tim, thanks for sharing that, because one of the many types of visibility scans we can produce and alert and report on and is that of our machine learning looking into the behavior of what's happening. What is the input? What are they writing? What are they saying? Is it just words, or is it phrases, or is it starting to kind of bubble up where, hey, we're seeing a lot more here? What's the intent? What's the thought behind it? And so that is in complement to maybe what, as Tim just described, another technology layer they have that might be looking at what's happening from the browser perspective. So yes, that's a good point to make in this. And again, we're not just talking just about the security of data and technology access, but we're also talking about the security of individuals and behavior and whatnot. So Ross, on that note, we'll switch over again. I'll kind of iterate the question there a little bit, but when we're talking about the multi-layered, and you've talked about some of these different projects, obviously we're in one of your layers, but what are some of the, layers you look at, and where do you, maybe is there a story where, there's an incident, or like Tim shared about, you can't hack me. You might be able to hack the internet, but you might get into this one box. But I'll let you kind of describe what you're thinking.
Tim, the first thing he said, I think hit the nail on the head for all of us. We don't know what we don't know. If you don't know it's there, then you can't act on it. And so that's a big thing that kind of runs through the entire layer system when you're talking about security. Because if you don't have the visibility, then you can't act on it. But for us, that layered approach, also he mentioned that a lot of it does bleed over into each other. And I think that's good. I mean, we need to have that on purpose, because not every system catches everything 100% of the time. So having some of those bleed over, for us, I know our layer is, we do MDR. Well, we also do SOC SIEM. Those kind of bleed into each other. And sometimes one will pick up something that the other one does not. I've never been, I'm knocking on some wood. I've never been ransomed. I've never been breached. I've never had a data loss that I'm aware of. Now that being said, I don't care who you are, it's coming. And I know if it has not already happened to me and I just don't know about it, then it will eventually. And so mitigating the amount of loss or exposure that you have is important, and that's part of this layering. But it starts with people. So the biggest layer for us is training our people. Cybersecurity is not a technology problem. It's not a Ross Randall problem. It's an institutional problem. Everybody has to be aware and understand what the threats are and how to recognize them and what needs to happen when you do encounter one. So training is a huge thing. That's a huge layer of it. Systems that are put in place to help us with, it's not like I can go around and put my hands on every single endpoint in the district. There's no way. And so you have to have systems in place. That's a huge layer of that can track changes. The MDRs are great. Used to, it was if you had an antivirus on your computer, you were great. That's no longer effective. Antiviruses are gone. They're a dinosaur. So something that really tracks the changes on a system and recognizes the threats and remediates those threats for you. Because and we've had some things that have been remediated. I say I've never been attacked, but obviously I'll get some malware that gets passed through every once in a while. We get some things that get picked up. Part of that, if it's coming through email, you guys have your product that detects malware does a great job. It helps me be able to see some of those things. So sometimes I might have one. Well, it may not track back exactly where it came from, and I can use your product to go in and drill down a little bit deeper to see what, exactly what attachment that was and how it interacted. Love that. So, that's just another piece of it. And then, like Tim said, if there's a school district that has not segmented their network, please do that today. That is absolutely necessary. You've got to, we've got all these different categories of people throughout our district that do different things. I've got a department of people that need to be able to get to our financial software package, which is hosted on site. I don't need anybody else to even be able to see that thing, to attach to it, to do anything to it. So segmenting that off and restricting that only to the users that need it, that's a huge thing. Students, they don't need to be able to get to the same things that the teachers get to. So segmenting that off through VLANs and lists are really, really key. Also, visitors on our campus, if they log in, to our, and we do allow guest Wi-Fi, but the only thing it has access to is the internet. It can't see any other, it can't even see IP addresses on its same VLAN. It wall gardens that off. So, those are easy things and not expensive things that a district can do right off the bat that creates that physical layer of protection for, within your school district. I said this before, school districts historically have not had to deal with a lot of this. It's just not something used to. You think, no, they're not going to mess with us. We're schools, they're kids. Now these bad actors, they would punch your grandmama in the face for $1. They're just evil people, and they don't care. They're absolutely 100% in it for the money. They're going to do everything they can. And if you ever look at your attack surface from your firewall, there's a lot of products that'll do that. We get hammered thousands of times every day, people trying to get through our firewall. It's just constant. So, having something in place too, like a SIEM solution that will help you look at your firewall logs so that you can go in and block any IP addresses that you don't want. A lot of folks, there's different blocks of IPs that obviously there's different countries that you don't want connecting to you at all, and you just completely block those off. But getting that under control is a huge thing. It goes back to that physical layer. And then for us, we are 100% Google Workspace. And so we've got to have something that looks at the files in those platforms that help us understand what's there. If we don't know what's there, we can't do anything about it. So putting rules in place that pick up if there's a social that is shared, or if there's any student information that's shared. I live in ManagedMethods. I live on that risk tab. That's my favorite go-to. I love the risk tab. I don't have another product. There's probably some out there, but I don't have another product in my tool belt that does as good a job or does a job at all of scanning images. So that image scan is a huge deal because kids are notorious for sharing things that they shouldn't share. They're curious. They have 16-year-old brains and they're crazy, just crazy. So, we're constantly trying to protect them from themselves. And, I've got a really good web filter, and it also, I have the piece, it's a piece that actually with AI detects if a kid is self-harmed, or a threat to somebody else or things like that. It's unreal how much pornography these kids want to try to find. It's just, but it's the world we live in. But having got that does bleed over into some of the other products, but there's nothing else out there that I've got that gives me the risk analysis that ManagedMethods does. That's a plug for you guys. I love that. Like I said, I live on that tab. It gives me some visibility that I don't get anywhere else. And I have found quite a few situations where the kids have shared a picture that was very inappropriate, and I'm able to go in. I can remove those emails. I can track to see, is that picture shared? I can see who it's shared with. So it gives me something that I can really start working with. Also, it gives us the opportunity to go sit down and talk with that child. That's a lot of what we do too. I tell our counselors all the time. I said, and I know this may be inappropriate for the group, but Johnny may be looking for boobs, a couple of times a week. Yeah, kids are going to do that. But if he's looking every single day, 10 times a day, there needs to be some intervention. That student has an issue. Let's bring them in. Let's try to work them through that, because if we don't catch that early, when they get to be a young adult, there's the possibility they could have some issues. So that's a lot of layers. It's a lot of it. And it's not just, it has, like I said, it's a people thing too. It's how do we take this data and use it to counsel our students? How do we, encourage them to follow the right path and keep them out of this mess? Because most days I want to go cut that internet cord. I just want to cut it off. There's so much trash and so much stuff out there for kids to get into. It's too easy to access. But the world we live in, you can't do that, because it's also has a lot of good and a lot of learning opportunities. And I don't know how you survive without internet. I sure couldn't watch TV at home, so gotta have that. But using all that, everything you have, also using it to help guide and train both staff and students. Anyway, that's all. I'm gonna shut up, because I can sit here. That's my talk for hours.
I know you could, and I know there's a few people in the audience, especially a good friend of mine, Amber, because she's been on these webinars. She sat on a stage with Tim and I at Coasting Conference, and they know everybody can that's in your shoes, that's in these roles. You guys could go on and on and on about all the different issues. First and foremost, thanks, Ross. I forgot to put the plug out there. The views and comments expressed by our speakers are those of those and not Managed Methods, because I don't want anybody blaming Managed Methods for punching grandma in the mouth and taking $1. So no, I appreciate that. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
I think it's you hit on a couple things there that I think are an overall theme, and Tim will agree with this, and everybody understands it too, but it's in a multi-layered approach. And why you have a multi-layered approach, it's better to have overlap of technologies than gaps. It's better to have, I've got a door lock, a deadbolt, and a chain lock. It's better to have, hey, I've got locks on my doors and windows, but I also have maybe a security monitoring service, or maybe I have a fence on the property. It's always better to be prepared, have overlap instead of gaps. And perhaps, yes, maybe we get multiple alerts from multiple tools. We have many mutual clients we work with that are in the filtering world. We also have our own filtering product, and there's ways we bring these all together, but it's better to have more visibility. And you talked about it. It does take a village in that aspect. And it's just common. I know, like Tim's constant theme whenever he talks about Managed Methods is, I don't know what I don't know. If you have to have visibility into what you talked about, especially in our world. We give you extreme visibility into what's happening inside of Google Workspace, inside of Microsoft 365, where these other layers are focused on, what's happening on the network, what's happening. You mentioned MDR and SIM tools, what's happening over here. Like we Managed Methods, we're not looking at, the log files over here on your computers. We're looking at what's happening over here in Google Workspace. So what you just shared is certainly important. So now I'm gonna bounce back over to Tim, and then Ross will circle around. So what do you recommend? And you've shared a lot of ideas already, or things you're working on, which could count as recommendations. But Tim, more specifically, are there things that you would recommend right now that districts could do to assess their current strategy? And maybe what questions should they be asking themselves to identify maybe these gaps or vulnerabilities if they don't have? Because there might be, obviously you've talked about VLANs and firewalls, and you talked about inventory, Ross, but are there things at a high level that you might recommend up front? Hey, here's what you should do to immediately go out and assess your strategy. And these are the questions you might want to ask yourself or your team or your district.
One is, are you still getting malware every once in a while coming in, right? If you are, that's a problem, right? And that's a problem with the product you're potentially using. I haven't had malware, not one piece of it, in a lot of years, and that's because I spent a little more money and got what I deem a better product, and that proved itself right away.
Okay.
So there's that. So what's coming in? Know what's on your network. You have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You have to know what's on your network and how did it get there, and is it okay to have that thing on your network? Who's using it? like a big thing is wireless displays, being able to display wirelessly to the TV that's on that wall. Is that a cool thing? Right? If that TV is not in the same VLAN that that laptop is in or that device, is that okay? Right? If it's a guest versus a staff member, that's a totally different conversation because you don't know where that guest computer came from and what's on it and who's on it. And so that wireless display, it's a challenge on that wireless display, whether you allow it or not, because typically they have to traverse VLANs, and when they do that, you might be opening yourself up for some risk just to do something very simple. And know your tools, right? That the risk tab is very important if you're a managed methods customer, and if you're not, you should be. It's extremely important to know what's on your network and educate yourself on what you don't know, because there's lots of things that we don't know. And it's like Ross said on that, what the PE program is doing, for the basketball I just learned just this past week, graduation, kids no longer have their student IDs. They're using this as their student ID, right? It's on this wall. You can't see it. It's the phone. It's a soft ID. Well, wait, what? What are you doing with those pictures? Who's having that, and how are they getting those pictures, and how do they know it's Tim and not Tom? How do they know that? And how does it get to their phone? And how do they, right? Is they're sending themselves a selfie? The photographer just takes a bunch of pictures, and then the student takes a selfie, and it matches up. It goes, okay, this face matches up with that face, therefore this must be that kid's ID. And here you go. Well, you talk about PII information, and now it's actually biographical PII information. It's like a thumbprint, but it's of your face. Like, holy crap. And I just learned about this a few days ago. No idea, but that's happening on your network. All kinds of stuff where the data is being leaked and you have no clue. So you just really have to know what's going on and know that you can't stop everything. You got to work with the wheel that you got. You can't block everything. You can't stop business. So you're going to have to compromise in a lot of places, but just know where you're compromising and feel good about it.
So
And
you're
be
saying
prepared.
I can't go cut that internet cord, Tim? Is that what you're saying? Just snip it right in half?
No
Yeah.
cutting the cord and no punching grandma. Yeah.
I'm wondering
Well,
if in Colorado anyone has ever used that phrase. They'll punch grandma right in the face. I've never heard that before in my entire life. And I'm an old man.
Well, that's why we bring panelists in from all over the country so we can pick up on different phrases, and there we go. So now I know around our office for a few days, Ross, there's going to be some people that will be like, hey, so I think that, Tim, you alluded to some key points that we talk about a lot in the managed methods world, because they're things you have to do at each layer. And you talked about it, like part of managed methods is we provide threat scanning. We look for malware. We look for phishing. You talked about knowing who's on your network. We talk about things like knowing which users have access, who's sharing what, who's logging in from where. Is this a compromised account? Why do you have, these logins coming from outside the United States, or why are they being blocked? And you should look into them. We talk about third-party apps. That's another big. You talked about what's connected to your network. We talk about who's got an OAuth token connected to your Google Workspace and why. Why are people installing these extensions on their personal device but using their school-issued credentials? And we all know about the OnlyFans stories and things of those nature that we talked about. And that alludes to what Ross talked about, is that there's just so much junk out there on the internet. There's a lot of good stuff out there, but there's a lot of bad stuff too. So thanks for sharing, malware, knowing what's on the network, who's using what, where, when, why. Those are all important questions to ask. So Ross, same thing from your perspective. I know you get asked a lot because you've been around the block. You're legendary down there in Mississippi and within the COSIN leadership chapters and whatnot, just like Tim was so active with COSIN up here in Colorado. What would you recommend to districts for ways to, if somebody asks you, what do you recommend? Like, hey, here's what you should be asking yourself. Here's a quick strategy to look into these things. Let's say it's a new tech director or somebody's just saying, hey, I've never done this with a school. What do you suggest?
The first thing is you got to educate yourself. That's the main thing. Depending on where you are in this journey, you've got to be willing to set aside some time to educate yourself. I'm one that I will talk to any sales guy that comes along because I'm going to steal some type of knowledge from them. So there's a lot of products out there. There's a lot of different things that are available. You're gonna have to carve out some time to research and understand what those are, how they work, and how they might fit into your environment. Because you're gonna have to have something. You know, you can't do what we're doing without having your back belt on. You've got to have the tools. And like I said, unless you've only got 10 kids, and even if you've got 10 kids and 15 employees, I still think you're going to have a hard time running around touching every computer every day, looking through everybody's email, making them wait before you look at the email for them to open. You can't do that. It's impossible. So, but you have to spend some time. That's one thing. We've been on this journey of really trying to get things in place, get more secure for about 5 years. And over the past 3 years, I did about 12 NDR evaluations. I spent an enormous amount of time mainly because, like Tim said, I didn't know what I didn't know. I wanted to understand how they work, because it's hard for you to decide what's going to fit best in your environment unless you understand how they work and then where the differences are. So don't be scared to invite a product salesman or something in and then tell them, no, that's not the right fit for me. You've got to have those relationships with the right people that understand those systems and products before you can determine what is best going to fit in your environment. For me, that was a big thing that I had to get over, because we're busy. We don't have time. You got to make time. This is busy. I guarantee you come across any school district that has been hacked or that has been under a ransomware that was serious. They're going to make time after that, and it's coming. It's coming. So go ahead and make time and spend the time that you need to understand how these things work. There's no one district that is like another one. Every district is different. But basic, what you have to secure your environment. If you don't know how to do that, you got to go to your board and tell them, we've got to do this or we're going to get hit with ransomware. Make your district give you some funding so you can bring somebody in if you can't do it yourself. Segment those networks. Look to see, who's what's actually connected. At a minimum, look through your DHCP addresses that have been handed out. Get an idea of what is connecting to your network and what's on there. But you got to be able to do that, and then start building on some of these other tools. There's you're not going to do it all in one day. You're not going to do it all in 1 month. You're probably not going to get it all done in 1 year. But you've got to start bringing in those layers. You've got to have some type of protection for your endpoints. You've got to have network segmentation. You've got to have user training. That's a huge thing that I think people miss out on, is they're not training their staff. And I don't care if you drive a bus or you're the superintendent. Everybody touches a computer. Everybody is using some type of information, understanding what the vulnerabilities are, what the risks are, what PII is, what FERPA is, all these different things. Everybody, you've got to train your people. And nobody likes it. Teachers don't have time for that, but they have to. It's that important.
Absolutely. And it's knowing what SIPA is, not just what you're surfing on the web, but what you're storing in Google Drive or OneDrive. Absolutely. If that's exposed to a student, that's considered a SIPA violation if it meets those criteria.
Also, what is being shared out of your domain that potentially has PII? You don't have a handle on that, especially if you're using a cloud, which I can't imagine any district at this point not using a cloud product like O365 or Workspace. I would say the vast majority of K-12s, if you're still running an Exchange server on-prem, or I remember when I first started, I had Squirrel Mail. Does anybody remember Squirrel Mail?
Well, it's like somebody.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, somebody asked about Novell GroupWise. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember that. Now, so Tim, Ross, as we're reaching down towards the end of the hour now, I'll ask you both just a yes or no question. Do you have a documented incident response plan in place? Yes or no?
Yes,
Ross?
yes.
Tim? I know you do. Yeah.
And I'm going to say no,
You're going to say no. You don't have a documented incident
I do
response
not.
plan in place.
I have a
Oh,
bits and pieces from multi, but not a document.
Mhm.
It's something
and
I need to work on.
so there's a potential summer project. Tim's like, oh, darn it.
Yeah. One
Ross
thing, let
is,
me say this real quick on
go ahead.
incident, because we've been dealing with that for years, trying to help districts in Mississippi put those together, trying to understand what that actually means, the disaster recovery policy, the incident response plan. Incident response plan doesn't have to be legalese. It doesn't have to be
Right.
something that is perfect. Sit down, figure out what you're gonna do if, in a few different situations, and just write it out in your own language. Who are you gonna contact? Are you gonna call the superintendent if you find out you get breached? Of course you are. Write it down. Doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be something that's all lawyered up. Put a plan in place of what you're gonna do, because, I've worked with districts that have got hit. When you get hit, you're not thinking, your brain turns to mush. And you have to have something that you can look at to be able to help guide you, because you don't want to miss a step. Anyway,
So all important again, because it's knowing what to do, who to contact, who to get involved, who not to call, kind of thing.
Yep,
That
absolutely.
aspect. So as we wrap up here, one of the things, and I'll come back a little bit to manage methods. Both of you obviously have been heavily involved with our platform, Cloud Monitor, our flagship product, for a number of years. We offer up a free risk assessment as a part of our free trial. It's complimentary. Anyone can take advantage of it. With that, maybe one tidbit you might share with someone, about the visibility aspect. So is there something that you would say, hey, take advantage of this free trial and go out and look for this? It may be different to each of you, but was there something that was specific, eye-opening for you, and more important because you might say, hey, folks, you really need to take a look at this, because if you didn't look at it before, ManagedMethods is going to show you that. So I'll stay with you, Ross, and then Tim will wrap up with you.
No, absolutely. Anytime, I don't, managed methods is a no-brainer. You got to do that today. But any system that you can get your hands on to get a free look at it, use it to scan your own network. I mean, there's a lot of them out there, but one thing that, and I can still remember when we first put this in place, I think this is my 4th year with you guys. I have to go, I think it's 4th year. The amount of PII that was in folders shocked me. I didn't realize. And then the amount of mass shares of some of that data. Teachers love to go to a conference and share. They, which is great. But you look and I had files that had 15,000 shares on it. What is on that document that many people outside the district has access to? So it's really eye opener just to be able to get that visibility, and and that's what made me a believer right off the bat. I said, no, I got to have this, because I didn't have any other, with Workspace, and I'm sure with O365 there are some tools, but they're not, they don't give you a nice GUI interface to figure things out, so definitely, if nothing else, do a trial and let them scan, and then get an idea of what's out there. You may be great and have nothing and think, well, I'm great. I doubt that's going to be the case with anybody.
Yeah, we usually don't see that case, but it's
No.
absolutely, it's take a look. See, Tim, anything specific that you've learned over the years? Because again, you've been with Managed Methods since our very first year. You're one of the very first. So what are some of your thoughts that over time that you would say that, hey, this is something that would be valuable by doing a free trial and taking a look inside the box?
Number one for me would be to see where your domain is being associated to, what apps. In my case, it's @ssk12.org. And it's exactly like you said, you don't think of it, but it could be recipes.com, that the staff member signed up with their work accounts. And that recipe.com has full access to the camera, full access to the drive, full access to the Gmail. And I mean, full access. So if they wanted to be bad actors, they've got everything they need, and you granted it to them. And then in addition, just the sheer volume of apps that your students are exposed to, that you have no clue. Managed Methods sees all of that. And then the ability, it has the ability to pull emails. If a bad phishing email gets through, push a button, it's gone from everyone's inbox.
The visibility into a lot of different areas. Absolutely. A quick plug. I want to thank audience member, gentleman named Chris, put in the Q&A for everybody. He shared that the state of Michigan has a great template. This kind of goes back to the questions about readiness, preparedness, incident response plans, etc. So thank you for sharing that. That's why we do these things. It takes a village. Ross, you talked about that earlier. It's not a Ross problem. It's not a Tim problem. It's a district problem. It's everyone. It's not only knowing what's there. When you talk about the fundamentals of cybersecurity and layers, it's you don't know what exists if you don't look for it. So you have to be monitoring and looking. It's better to have some overlap than gaps, and it takes a village. You got to have everyone from your superintendent, like you said, to your bus driver, be educated, be aware, be vigilant, be smart. And a lot of times it's it's what you don't know that can hurt you, but it's also stuff you may know, but you either just take it for granted or you overlook it. I think everyone on the call today, every IT director, tech director, system administrator, anybody that's in technology departments probably would be willing to say, yes, we know that staff members are using school issued technology probably for personal means. Some might say, well, is that really a big issue? To some, it may not. Maybe you've got bigger fish to fry, but to others, it may be a situation where, well, yeah, no, it's important. Like Tim was just saying, why is this person over here installing a third-party app from recipes.com? Or why is this person using match.com or worse, Tango or OnlyFans on their school-issued device or school-issued account? Many a times it's they don't know they've done it because they've accidentally done it, and other times maybe they do. So either way, last minute, I'll throw out to anyone in the audience if you have any quick questions for our panelists, or if you want to learn more. I'm sure that Ross and Tim are both open to if you were to reach out to them. Their information's public. It's on their school websites. You can learn more about it. Of course, as a reminder, everyone, you will get a copy of today's webinar. We highly encourage everyone to at least take the advice from Ross and Tim, at least at the one layer, whether you're a Google Workspace shop, a Microsoft 365 shop, or both, and you want to have greater visibility into your environment, take advantage of our free trial by visiting ManagedMethods.com. You can take advantage of our free trial with both our flagship Cloud Monitor product, which Ross and Tim both use, or if you're interested in learning more about our new content filter technology for the browser, we're happy to talk about that as well. But Tim, Ross, I thank you both for sitting on the beaches and hanging out with us there. Ross, thank you for sharing some new phrases that we'll use with cybersecurities in the future. I think I'm seeing a T-shirt. Cybersecurities. Cybersecurity attacks. We're going to punch you in the mouth. But we appreciate you both for spending valuable time in your day, and good luck with your summer projects. A lot on tap. You're both talking about a lot of projects and a lot of things that need to get done. So I wish you the best. To everyone in our audience, thank you for joining us today. Again, if you'd like to learn more about Managed Methods, specifically ManagedMethods.com. If you'd like to get in touch with our two presenters, you can reach out to their respective schools. Steamboat Springs, Colorado for 10 miles. And Ross is down there in the great state of Mississippi. You're going to probably find him there on that beach. But if anyone,
Lamar County School District.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. I got to say the school district, Lamar County Schools. We were supposed to have our good friend Matthew Fredrickson with us today from Council Rock. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us. But again, thank you both. Thank you for our audience, and I wish everyone, hey, have a great summer. Wish you well.
Thanks.